Good evening. My name is Kiara White, and I am one of the co-hosts tonight for Shenita's Is Your Life in Order show. Today, we will be talking about advanced medical directives and living wills with Chaplain Jackie. We also will have another co-host, Mr. Limit, Mr. Wendell. I will bring Mr. Wendell to the show so he can introduce himself. And
Great
Chaplain
evening.
Jackie.
Okay. Great evening, everyone. This is a very serious subject, which I hope you pay attention to because it's something that doesn't take that long, but it's critically important. It's something that you want to do before that loved one gets into a situation where they can't care for themselves. It's called advanced directives. Some people think it's the same thing as a living will. A living will is just one of the documents of an advanced directive. But I am not an expert in advanced directive, nor do I play one on TV. But we do have Chaplain Jackie Griffin, who is an expert, and I'd like her to introduce herself. Chaplain Jackie. Okay.
Chaplain Jackie, are you there?
Okay. She may be having some audio difficulties, so we'll
Yes.
continue till she can get on board. If you can talk a little bit, Kara, I'm going to put into the chat and let her know she dropped off. She
Okay,
came
yeah, I
back.
just removed her and added her back, so we'll see if this works.
Okay.
All right, well, she may be joining us soon, so we'll kind of give her some time to join. So while we're waiting on her, if you can please like and share this show, that'll be great. This will be some very important information that we'll be discussing for the next hour. So we do ask that you take notes, get a pen and a paper, a phone, a napkin, whatever you need to take notes on. This is some very important information that will not only be beneficial for you, but for your loved ones. You never know what you can get from this information tonight. And we'll also have someone sharing their personal story on how important having a living will and an advanced medical directive will be.
Yes, it's going to be a great show. Stay tuned. A lot of people are afraid to talk about death, but death is a part of life.
Okay.
And Chaplain Jackie, you're back.
I'm back. So technical
Yay!
difficulties.
That's okay. That's
Oh,
okay. We're back.
you
We're
got
rolling.
this expert. You got this expert. Chaplain Jackie, I was just saying that you're an expert on this. I know you're going to share a little bit about yourself, but you have a tremendous background. The things that you do, we really appreciate. It's really critically important. So, like I
Yes,
said in the
sir.
pre-show, you got a lot of intestinal fortitude, and it takes a caring individual like you to help people through in times like these. So, if you can introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Thank you. So I'm a chaplain for one of the local hospitals here in the outskirts of Atlanta, as well as a current reserves chaplain, military chaplaincy since 2014. So the importance of advanced directives is have the conversation. And then from having a conversation, making sure that you have the documentation to support the conversation so everybody's on one accord. So I'm happy to be here and thank you for having me.
Just because you tell Riri at the chicken shack about what's going to happen to you, that's not enough.
That's not enough.
You
Have it
get
written
recipe
down
of chicken.
somewhere.
Okay. Okay.
Because when emotions rise up and grief sets in, what you said at that chicken shack all goes out the window because people
Nope, doesn't
tend
matter.
to do what they want to do and what they feel is best for them instead of honoring your wishes.
Got it. So it could be worse than fighting over a Popeye chicken sandwich, huh?
Oh, very worse.
All right,
Death
so we'll
brings out the
actually.
worst in some families, believe it or not.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll actually get the ball rolling and go with our first question for you, Chaplain Jackie. For those in the audience that just don't know, what are advanced medical directives? So, like Mr. Wendell said, some think that it is the same thing as a living will, but
Mhm.
can you describe what the difference is between the two?
So, in a sense, as far as just validating and providing information for an advanced directive, Advanced directives is something that you receive basically from the hospital, typically the spiritual care office. Advanced directives, how I like to put it in its lamest terms for anyone who I talk to, is basically your healthcare wishes. How would you like to be cared for in case an emergency situation arises? What are your wishes? Do you know your wishes? Do you know how you like to be cared for? And do you know how you would like to be treated? Because when emergency hits and your heart stops beating, or if you stop breathing, which is considered, the next steps are CPR, resuscitation. Well, do you want that? And so you want to look at what your current health conditions are. How sick are you? And if you're not sick, a lot of times people wait till they get sick and then they want to make decisions. But I feel like the best time to make the decisions are when you're healthy. So you're basically in your right mind and you can have the conversation as well as prepare the documentation for these are my healthcare wishes. You're in your right mind. You're able to make decisions for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that from personal experience, that really, really helps because there's a lot of emotions, and from my personal experience, you think you're prepared for the death of a loved one, and
Yeah.
you're really not. And you kind of turn into the Incredible Hulk because your emotions all over the place. You just kind of swell up. You want to do the right thing, but you're not thinking straight. So we appreciate people like you guiding us. One question I have for you is, could you tell people what a healthcare proxy is?
So your healthcare proxy, but in an advanced directive, we typically call it your healthcare agent, the person basically that's going to make decisions on your behalf, correct? Is that where you're leaning
Yes,
towards?
yes.
So
Hmm.
basically, you want to choose someone who you trust. TRUST, trust, all caps, to carry out your wishes in an emergent situation. Because, like you said, when critical illness comes and the doctors say there's nothing more that we can do, they want to know, well, what would your loved one want? What
Yes.
they want us to, if they were to stop, their heart was to stop beating right now, if they were to stop breathing right now, would they want to have CPR where we jump on, not we, me per se, but the medical team? Would you want the medical team to pounce on you, breaking ribs, to bring you back, resuscitate you?
Okay.
If you're not breathing, would you want to be intubated, oxygen provided, life support to help sustain your life a little bit longer?
Hmm.
And typically it's not for self, it's for your loved ones because it's already difficult. It's already challenging. So you want to select someone that you trust, that you believe in your heart of heart at that moment. They're going to do what you want. They're going to honor your wishes. They're going to do what's best for you and not for them or for any other loved ones. Because it can get tricky and sleeves be rolled up. So choose someone that's going to honor your wishes. At the end of the day, that's what you want.
I
Excellent.
can only imagine at that moment when, everything is already in the heated moment, and you have to make these decisions. It's best
Yes.
to just, kind of read off of a paper. This is exactly what this person requested, rather than having, oh, well, I know that this is what she told me, and someone else saying, oh, no, this is what she told me. So yeah, having everything in writing is very important. I kind of want to go back to what you said about the best time is when you're healthy. So as someone who is young in their upper 20s, when is the correct time, or what would you suggest would be an appropriate time to actually start looking into this? Is it when you're in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 20s? So can you kind of expand a little bit more about what suggested, I guess, age range would
Mhm.
you recommend?
Well, I would say it's situational
Okay.
because each person, each one of us, we have, um, health issues varies from person to person. So you want to be able to calculate, the frequency of going to the doctor, making sure that one, you are going to the doctor
Hmm.
for, your yearly physicals, exams, that you're already having a conversation with your doctor. Because more than likely the doctor is going to be the one to guide you based upon your current condition. You may want to look into this. This may be something you want to consider, especially because a sickly 20-something-year-old versus a healthy 20-something-year-old, it's going to vary again. You
Mhm.
know, what are your chances? What does life look like for you as far as having a sense of quality of life? How well are you living? Are you compliant? Meaning, if you do have a health condition, are you taking your medications?
Mhm.
Are you seeing the doctor? Are you staying on top of your appointments? So, what does that look like? And it varies again, the situation from person to person. But if you're taking care of yourself, and that's one thing where a lot of times that's the breakdown in communication to just from the jump start. As an African American race, we don't frequent the doctors, or we're non-compliant, or I've even experienced where people will take, they're holistic.
Mhm.
So you want to make sure that you're having a conversation, one, with the doctor, because that's the person that's going to, tell you the status of your health condition. How severe are you? How sick are you? How healthy you are? As well as then you can self-examine and say, you know what, based off of my condition, based off of my health status, this is something I want to go ahead and have in place. Because if this was to permit and something was to happen right now, my heart was to stop beating, would I want to be considered a full cold where the medical team does everything? Or am I too sick to have a quality of life and be sustained? Do I want to continue to suffer? Or do I want to be considered DNR, which is do not resuscitate, or a DNI, which is do not intubate? But it's still good to know. And as long as you're on the right path of making sure you get your yearly visits, you are aware. People talk about being aware of your credit score, but what's the awareness of your health, your credit of your health? That's
That's a
the
good
most
point.
important thing, and those in our health, we tend to take it for granted or overlook it.
Great points. Great points.
Yeah. So if you say, I like that term you use, and also use the analogy of like car insurance or house insurance.
Yeah.
Here's some
Yeah.
insurance, like you say, not just for your loved ones. It lets them know what needs to be done. There's a written document, and I believe there's forms specific to each state. Is that correct? As far as the
Yes. Yes. And so you want to get that document and be informed. You want to sit down, you want to read it, you want to take it in, digest it, make sure you understand it. And if you don't understand it, you can reach out to a chaplain at the hospital facility. Access, when you call the operator of the hospital, ask to speak with a chaplain in spiritual care who will happily spend time with you, explaining to you what the document means, because it's a wealth of information in the document. So just to give a quick synopsis, when the first page within the state of Georgia, when you open up the first page, the first thing outside of from your name and your date of birth, the next thing is who is your healthcare proxy, your healthcare agent.
Mhm.
And you can select up to 3 people. You can select your first person is always going to be your primary person. So that person is going to be the one that they're going to designate an emergency rise. They're going to call that person and they're going to talk with them and let them know this is what's happening. How would you like for us to proceed? And then you can have other people on that document that will serve as secondary that can, help you make a decision. So it's a team effort.
Okay.
And so that's something I also share with the patients. You don't have to just have one person. It gives you an option up to 3 people.
Good. Thank you.
And
Because go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead. No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because my advanced director, before talking to you, I handed out all these little rubber band bracelets, WWWD. So my advanced director, what would window do? But now I'm gonna get the document from Georgia because I don't think that was quite specific enough. So I appreciate it.
Okay. Yes, because some people I've learned don't always want to select their spouse.
Mhm.
They feel like, it's already a hardship.
Mhm.
So they rather select maybe their children, let them come together, and then they, maybe the oldest child or whoever they feel is more sound, logically sound, to make the decision. So it varies. Typically, that decision, if without an advance directive, no healthcare proxy, okay, it typically goes to the next of kin. So would you want to trust that next of kin? That's something you have to consider and think about to make those, last moment decisions on your behalf.
Okay, understood. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So speaking of the forms, exactly where do individuals find the forms?
Typically, most individuals get the forms from the hospital. Say, for instance, before medical procedures, any type of outpatient or inpatient surgeries, or being admitted to the hospital, the nurse looks into the system and see that you don't have a advance directive on file. Then they go ahead and ask you, would you like one, or would you like information on one? And then it's generated to the chaplain to bring up a document and have a conversation with the patient at that time. And sometimes outpatient surgery, when they're providing patients with a packet, preparing them for surgery, would automatically be included in there.
Okay, good information. So if you're not, say you're not currently in the hospital, or you're not a patient, is that something that individuals can still find the forms from the hospital and get completed in case they do have something that comes up later on in life?
Yes, absolutely. You can call and make an arrangement ahead of time, or you can go check in at the front desk and ask, for a chaplain, and that you would like an advance directive. And then a chaplain will come out at that time and bring the advance directive and be willing to explain it to you at that time. The only thing that you want to be sure that you do not get family members to sign the advance directive. Because you want to make sure that these are your wishes and that they're not altered or changed in any form, and that they have your best interests at heart, and that they don't see like a chance of them getting something out your will and things of that nature. So it's a way that document protects you, from being used or misused, or they want your possessions, when that time comes for you to transition on to your eternal life, or for some waiting for you to just kick the bucket. Who knows? Again, situational.
Exactly.
Yep,
Right.
you
From
never
family
know.
to family.
Yes, very informative, very informative. Thank you.
Yes, you're
Another
welcome.
question, like Kiara had asked, where do you get the forms from? After you complete them, where do you put them? I mean,
So good question. Good question. So once you get the document and you go through, you have a conversation with your healthcare agent, you want to make sure you have a copy. Get a copy for yourself and get a copy for each healthcare agent that is listed on that document. One, because you want to make sure that communication across the board is solid. Everyone is on the same page. Everyone knows your wishes, and no one is saying, well, Big Mama didn't give that to me. Big Mama didn't tell you about it. No.
right.
Everybody's on the same page, right? And so
Yes.
because you're not in the hospital, typically if you're a patient in the hospital, we'll get two witnesses who are not affiliated with you through kinship. So typically it'll be a stranger, is how it is explained, and a chaplain will witness the advance directive. And that could also vary from hospital to hospital. Some hospitals wants two strangers to witness the advance directive. And at that time, if you're an inpatient, what they'll do is they'll take the document, they'll make a copy of it, they'll provide the patient with the original document, and they'll take that copy and they'll place it immediately in the patient's chart. So an emergent situation arises, they already know what's your code status, and who's your healthcare agent. So they know if your heart stops right now, we know you are a full code, we're doing everything, or vice versa. If you're DNR or DNI, then we know to allow you to go respectfully and honor your wishes. So if you're outside of the hospital or outpatient, outpatient will be similar to an inpatient, but just say you're outside, you don't have no medical procedures coming up, no appointments or anything of that nature, get the document, go through it with your healthcare agent or agents if you select more than one. Make sure you get, again, 2 witnesses who are not affiliated through kinship to sign the last page of that document. They witness your signature, see that you're signing, because that's the purpose of witnessing someone's signatures, not that you sign it and then no one witnessing, then you get them to, we want to use integrity with that, okay?
Absolutely.
Because we want to make sure that it's your binding documents. We want to make sure that you're safe and that these are your wishes and that this is what you asked for, and no one completed this document and put their wishes in there, because I don't want to, write your wishes, and I don't want you writing my wishes,
Yeah.
And at that
Yes, I
point,
agree.
make sure everybody has a copy. And what I tell them, keep it somewhere safe. So when that day comes and something happens and you get a phone call and saying you're listed as a healthcare agent for John Doe, how should we proceed? This is what, the determination is. How do we proceed with this patient? Is this patient a full code or not? And you're listed as the primary person, as a healthcare agent. What are our next steps? So keep it somewhere safe. And for some, it may be a glove compartment.
Yeah, I actually heard somebody's one of the advanced directive shows I'm watching even said some people keep it in the freezer, believe it or not. If they're like disorganized, they stick it in the freezer. At least they know where it's at,
Know where to find it.
Their desk, you can't find their desk because there are mounds of paper that look like Mount Rushmore on the desk. So put it somewhere safe so you can find it. When you get that call, your mind is going to be going someplace, somewhere.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, for those that may not know, so we know where to get them, we know how to get them and how to ask. Is there a cost for the forms?
Good question. Great question. Okay, y'all ready for this? Y'all holding on to your seat? Everybody
I'm holding
down
on.
for this?
I'm holding on.
All right. 4-letter word that we all love to hear. All caps. Free.
Yes.
There's
Awesome.
no
Great
charge,
news.
no cost.
No cost. Awesome. That is even better. So you pretty much don't have any excuse not to have the forms. There's nothing really holding you back but to go and get the forms completed.
And just being informed. That's why we're having a conversation tonight, because so many people don't know what the first step is. So I'm grateful for, this topic and having this conversation tonight. So Shenita, if you're out there, thank you, girl.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else as far as any personal experiences that, people may not think about that they need to, get this important documents filed? Anything like from your experience being a chaplain, they may think that they're perfectly healthy and a situation may come up where they may have needed to have these forms and they didn't. You mind sharing any kind of experience?
So the first part, I'm sorry, again, technical difficulty. What was the first part of I got the end of them. What was your first part?
Oh, no, just saying, if you can share from your experience any situations where there have been individuals that thought that they may not have needed one, and something unfortunately happened where they did need one, but it may have been too late, or anything about any experiences.
So currently, this is COVID season, the pandemic. And at this time, I know the particular hospital where I'm located, there are no visitors allowed, right? So what do you do in a situation like that? As long as our patients are oriented and is in his or her right mind during this pandemic, what is happening is they're telling their doctor or the PA, their healthcare agent, who they want to make decisions on their behalf, who they trust, the relationship to them, and their contact information along with their code status. Going back to right now, if your heart was to stop beating, would you want, to be resuscitated? If you was to stop breathing, would you want to be intubated? That's considered a full code, making sure that they understand that. And if that's something that they want to be a full code, and their health proxy information, relate to the doctor or the PA at that time. The doctor and the PA will honor that and document it in the demographic section of that patient's electronic chart, and making sure that they relay their wishes to whoever their healthcare proxy is as well, and making sure everybody's on the same page. So when you enter the hospital and you don't have anything, and your prognosis isn't good, ask for a chaplain. And a lot of times upon entering to the hospital, when you're being processed in, the nurse will ask, um, if you have an advanced directive and they don't see one in the system, they'll contact spiritual care. And at that time, a chaplain will come and see you and have a conversation with you. So if you don't have your decision made at that time, which I've seen that, well, the patient says, I don't know right now. Well, and I encourage them to go ahead, have a conversation, and let the doctor know, so the doctor can document that in your electronic chart, and also make sure that the nurse is aware. So when I step away, that nurse is a reminder. Do you have that contact information of your healthcare proxy? Have you chosen someone you trust? And do you know your code status?
It's funny that you mentioned that some people just don't know what they want. I actually wrote that down as a myth that I read during my research. The myth is I should wait until I am sure about what I want before signing an advance directive. So you actually just addressed that, but I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah, and know your prognosis. I think that's, whatever your reasoning for being in the hospital, whatever the conversations that you and the doctor are having, making sure you understand what your quality of life is going to look like, as well as understanding how long you have to live, because some people are given short terms to live, which causes them and probably put them in a corner to make a quick decision. And then for others, the prognosis isn't as severe, but you're able to still have a quality of life. And I think in the sense of that, the reality of that conversation should be able to help guide any individual on how they should go about, making their decisions.
A question. Okay, they've done everything right. They've gotten the forms from the state website. They've gotten 3 healthcare advocates, proxies, and so they've done everything right. And they're in the hospital, right? And they usually on the hospital, you have, you fill out, who to contact. And what you're thinking about from a process wise, that some disconnect may be where the person that, they contact may not know who the healthcare proxies are. So how can we close that gap when somebody's on the hospital bed, they think they've done everything right, but one person who, is a contact person, maybe their spouse doesn't know who the healthcare proxy is. What kind of discussions should we have ahead of time to address those issues?
Inform them, let them know, ask the question. If you're informed, then you know to ask the question. I think the trouble comes in when you're uninformed. You don't even know what questions to ask. You don't even know where to start. So just one, being honest with yourself, and then being honest with those that are near and dear to you. Because at the end of the day, those are the ones, when we transition on, those are the ones that are going to be left behind trying to figure out, how did this happen? When did this happen? Who knew? Who didn't know? Asking all those questions. So really just one, being informed, getting the information out there to the communities, and making sure that everyone's having a communication, and making sure everyone's on the same page. And you can even double check when, if you're oriented in your right mind enough to find out, well, who is the healthcare proxy? Who do you have? Asking the nurse that question. And if you as a patient aren't oriented enough, not in your right mind, because it could have been an accident, or you crash, or whatever the situation may have been that brought you into the hospital, then whoever your next of kin is, hopefully they know to ask the questions.
And just a real quick follow-up for Kiara speaks. How do you get people to overcome, because death is a hard subject to talk about. Just from your experience, what are some ways that, say I want to have an advanced directive, right? And Kiara is a person I want to designate, but she's like death averse. She doesn't want to talk about it because a lot of people don't. This is reality, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have wills. So how can you overcome that? I call it a death stigma.
The death stigma. So if you have one party who wants to have the conversation and the other party's like, get out of here with that, or I don't want to have that conversation, and stop being silly, you're not going anywhere.
Exactly right. Yes.
That may not be the person you want as your healthcare proxy.
Okay.
Simple as that.
All right, thank you.
But you want to make sure that you're responsible enough, to go ahead and document everything. And you may need to find a new healthcare proxy, and it's okay because everybody can't handle that type of stress level. True. Just emotionally, mentally, it's too much. So if emotionally and mentally is too much for that individual, then don't add that to them. Don't put that on their shoulders. Or you can take a step back and occasionally keep having a conversation. For me, for any difficult conversation, get them full. Because once you get somebody full, get some free refills going. No one's moving with a full belly. And they don't have a choice but to sit there and listen to you.
Yep.
You don't get the answers until you sign this document.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And understand how important this is. And hopefully the person is important enough to you that make you say, okay, you went to these extreme measures. This is important to you. So therefore it's important to me.
Great.
So
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I actually have a piggyback on that question. What if it's the opposite? What if, just for an example, a child wants their parent to get one, and they are, kind of hesitant and, just kind of don't want to talk about it. At what point do you say, okay, it's time for you to get one? Or, do you just let something happen or just kind of let them tell you what they want? Or what if they just don't want to have the conversation? What if it's the opposite?
What if it's the opposite? Be creative, take time, and prayerfully you have the time. That's one. Prayerfully you have the time to just basically have the conversation over time. Because that document, it's a lot of information. If you just slide it across the table and say, here, complete this, fill this out, But, hopefully there's time. Again, if you, going back to what I started with earlier, if you have a conversation while you're healthy enough, and something does arise, then you'll be able to say, well, my mom would want this, or my mom wouldn't want this. My dad or my husband or my wife, this is their wishes. They would want this or they wouldn't want that. Because when you get in front of the doctor is going to put it out there and ask the question, everything that we're doing, would your loved one want this? Would this be their wishes? And would you be able to say, yes, this is what they want? And so many times I've seen family members struggling, looking at each other, shaking their head in tears. Mama wouldn't want this. Daddy wouldn't want this. And then I've heard, well, when did Daddy tell you that? When I was on the phone talking to him. And this pandemic has brought so many unconventional situations, again, where loved ones are in a hospital as patients by themselves. And family members, aren't able to come in and out freely like they once used to be able to see about them, see how things are going. So for situations like that, of course, the doctor will bring in at family meetings or give a call. But a lot of times it's when the prognosis isn't good. And then imagine the emotions are already high. So again, be creative in having the conversations. Your loved one, your spouse, your parent, what make them tick, or those quirky things about them. So use that to be creative in a way to have a conversation and allow them time to digest it, because that's a hard topic to have about death. So you think I'm dying tomorrow? Like, what's going on
Mm-hmm,
here?
mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon,
I ain't
apparently.
going
You never
nowhere.
know.
I'm
So we
not
actually have
going
a
anywhere.
yes. We actually have a comment in the Facebook chat before we bring our next guest in. It should also be discussed during the power of attorney, life insurance, or even the executor conversation. So yes, so that's a
So
good point.
now, when you mention power of attorney, that's not handled at the hospital. Again, hopefully you're being proactive enough to have the time to do that, to go to the law office. Because now
Okay.
you're bringing in a lawyer, and attorneys, and those, that's signed in a whole different fashion. So the hospital chaplains do not cover power of attorneys.
Okay.
That is so many times the chaplain office would get the call and say, can we get a notary for this document that we got offline, or, for power of attorney? Sorry, you're a little too late, because there's a process, a whole separate entity that I'm not aware of. I haven't looked into that as yet, but I do know it requires a lawyer and it requires notary, and you have to have time to do it. That your loved one in the hospital, I'm sorry, you're too late.
Gotcha. Great point. All right, so we'll actually go to our next segment with the next guest. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Mr. Carnell McBride in.
Hey
Hello,
everybody.
hello. How are you?
I'm beat up.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh
So
I'm beat
no.
that's
up.
how they
Get
get you to
well.
sign your advance directive.
That's it. That's exactly it. Let me
All
fix
right,
this
so
camera a little bit. There we go.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I said, let me fix this camera. I'm actually I was listening. I just jumped on literally 2 minutes ago because I thought today was Friday. And last night I was texting Shenita like, yo, I'm backstage.
Uh-huh.
I'm back. I'm backstage. And I was listening to what you guys were saying, and Miss Jackson was saying about the power of attorney. Not only do you have to have it notarized, you have to have witnesses. So if you're in the hospital, especially with COVID and everything going on,
No,
you
it's too
you
late.
you know what they say. It's you're in a bad situation. And I know I just jumped on the conversation a little bit late, but I'm an insurance agent, and my job is to make sure that, especially in our community, that we are more proactive. We make sure that we have, because look, none of us know when God's going to call us home. But what's worse than that is, and I'm going to share with you all my story, is there's the gray area. If God calls you home and you've got some life insurance, guess what? You get a check. Your family gets a check. Your beneficiaries get a check if you have something in force and in place. But the gray area is what I experienced. Luckily, my insurance covered it. But on January 1st, my car hydroplaned on the highway, and I ran into the wall on 285 in Glenwood. But the scariest feeling ever, I don't know if that's me giving the feedback, was watching the cars come at me that were about to hit me. So this incident where I fractured my wrist, I also fractured my my hip, and I had to have emergency surgery the following morning. I'll be in a wheelchair while I heal for 3 months. But talking about what you guys are speaking on about the power of attorney and the living will and the healthcare medical directive, the first thing they said to me after they got me out of the car with the jaws of life was, do you have a will? First thing, who do we need to contact, and do you have a will? Because they didn't know if there was internal bleeding or anything. And as Chaplain Jackie was just saying, at that point, by the time you get to the hospital, there is no time to reach out to family, to have them fill out paperwork, to have witnesses, to get it notarized. Because what if there was a situation where this is life or death? What if you needed a blood transfusion, but you're a Jehovah's Witness and you can't receive it? What if your brother, what if my family's a Jehovah Witnesses? What if my brother says no blood transfusion, but my sister says give him a blood transfusion? If there's not something in your living will that has this directive in place, the hospital makes a choice, not only on what they think is best for your care, but for other reasons. And some of that's going to be like, well, hey, we can harvest the organs and give that to the other people. These are things, you guys, that as a community we're failing in horribly. We're failing in horribly. The loss of our generational wealth from one to another, it comes from us not having a will in place and losing so much money going through probate. And it's not that we don't know these things, it's just our freaking lack of taking action. And that is the problem, you guys. Look, if it wasn't for the ability for first of all, that I'm right-handed. So thank you, God, that I'm right-handed. Because look, you guys, my birthday was on the 20th. And thank you so much. Turned 49. Didn't think I was gonna make it, but as a man, the hardest thing for me to deal with leaving the hospital on the 8th was the fact that my wife was going to have to be my caregiver. And when I say no man wants to think that his wife has to be the person that helps him cook, clean, get dressed, bathe, use the bathroom, it's you really get to test your relationship. You really get to test your relationship. But having life insurance is a responsibility of every adult, whether you have kids or not, whether you're married or not. Having the life insurance gives you an opportunity to live an inheritance, whether it's a charity, whether it's a family member, where it's a relative, a close friend, a church. And we have to take advantage. That's simple. It should be common sense, but you know what they say, common sense isn't always that common. But when you when you get married, it's a conversation that you should be having while you're engaged. Hey, you know what? We need to make sure, if we're going to be starting our lives together, I need to make sure that I leave if something were to happen to me, not just injured or sick or death, but what if I am injured? What if I'm diagnosed with MS? What if I have dementia? What if I come across with cancer or have a heart attack or stroke? And those things happen to people in their 20s. Those things happen to people in their 30s. We can't continue to think, well, I've got more time, and this is a decision I'm gonna make when I'm in my 60s. These are all of us know people that have passed in their teens, in their 20s, in their 30s. So we lose valuable time because the cost of that insurance skyrockets between the ages of 20s and 60s, if you can even get it covered. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you guys, and I'll shut up, is the fact that we have to make it it has to be intentional, you all. If we have these things in place, we have to have these conversations with our family members. We have to have it with our girlfriend from the wedding, the guys we watch football with, the people we go to church with. It's not taboo. It's not taboo to have these conversations, because this is a part of everyday conversation within wealthy people. We made it taboo, but what's taboo is when you're sitting on your deathbed and you got to tell your wife, who thought everything was in place, don't have any insurance. And now she's got to figure out how she's going to raise these 4 kids on her own. That's what's taboo. That's what's embarrassing. But we have to, as a community, we have to make sure that we get past the ego and the pride, and we have these conversations, especially when it comes to educating people on why you need the life insurance. You need to have the education on why the power of attorney is important. You need to have the education on what the medical directive is. You need to have the education on the difference between the will and the living will. And, those conversations start with people that are on this call right now. We have to, if we have, each one of us have those things in place, we got to find out, we got to ask our parents, hey, Mom, when's the last time you and Dad updated your will? Because if you don't have that information, guess what? When they pass, your siblings, if you got a good job, your siblings calling you, asking you, can you take care of that funeral? And they ain't got no problem asking you for no money. And those are things, and I'm sure all of us have experienced that on one level or not. Those are the things as a community that we really have to take a deep dive in. We have to have those tough conversations, and we have to have them often. Thank you for allowing me to share, y'all.
Thank you so much for sharing. We have some comments in the Facebook. Absolutely preach. So very, very good sharing your experience. We really appreciate it. That pretty much shows how real something can change. In a matter of a second. As soon as you got out of the car, they ask you, "Do you have a living will?" So that shows you how important it really is, and that we all need to get our house in order.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
Happy belated birthday, Cornell. Thank you for sharing your
Yes, happy
story.
belated birthday.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, y'all. Let me tell you, and I'll say that again because I can't reiterate the importance of it. And one of the things I love about Shenita, working with Shenita and her book, there's gonna come a time when you're not gonna be able to go back and change anything.
Mhm.
When you're in that car accident, if your health changes, it could have been a situation or you get a bad diagnosis where you can't get the insurance, or the insurance is simply not affordable. And that can happen. You go to the doctor, you think you got the flu, you got COVID. And let me tell you all this. One of the things that insurance companies are going to be doing right now in 2021 is they're going to be putting in what's called a 2-year elimination period, which means because there's people that have COVID right now that don't know they have COVID, or have been exposed to COVID that don't know they've been exposed, the insurance companies are going to protect their bottom line. And what they're going to do is they're going to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and insure you. But if something happens to you in the first 2 years, what we're going to do is we're just going to give you your money back plus 10%.
Wow.
They're not going to pay out that claim, because you got to imagine this. Imagine how many people, and I lost a friend that's 29 years old that was healthy 3 weeks ago and he was gone last week. There are people that just simply don't know they have it, or haven't been exposed to it, or it's not showing. So the insurance companies have to protect their bottom line. They can't insure everybody because a lot of these people don't know that they have it, or that they're going to contract it. So imagine how difficult it's going to be, especially because people of color are contracting the disease faster than anybody else. We have less access to a lot of healthcare, less than other people. It's going to be difficult, you guys. And if we don't say, hey, let me just go get 100,000, go get what you can get right now that's affordable. Get something that you know is going to pay off the house, going to get those kids to school. Replacing your income for at least 10 years is important, because you guys, when it comes back and there's a situation where you cannot get it, your family is screwed. It's not you that's screwed. It's your family that's screwed. It's your spouse and it's your kids that get screwed because you didn't want to make a responsible, proactive decision. And that's something that's going to impact your family for generations to come.
Hey, Cornell, thank you for your personal experience. I mean, that's like an eye opener. It's one thing that, to be there and actually share it and, hold up your arm. I'm glad it was your left arm and you right with your right,
Me too.
But how can we help? When we talked about the issues, we talked about some ways to get people to talk about death more, especially, having over dinner, feeding people, and just before they pass out from the itis, having them sign that advanced directive. So what are some other suggestions that you have?
You know what, you guys, this is going to sound really crazy. Over the next 2 weeks, several of you all are going to be invited to watch Super Bowl parties. Everybody's going to talk about Tom Brady and Mahomes playing football. We have to make this conversation about. Here, one of my mentors told me this. His name is Hubert Humphrey, and he started a company called WFG. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Humphrey, why is it that the Black community doesn't get the value of life insurance, but they're more excited about the opportunity to sell it? He said, Cornell, because in the Black community, you've always been exposed to how to make money, but not necessarily the value of what you're selling. So what we have to do is we have to let people know about what's at risk?
Mm.
What's at risk if you don't make this decision? And let me tell you, I say some things when I'm sitting in front of husbands and wives that the average agent wouldn't say. You know, if Mr. Hollins was married to Miss Jackie, I gotta ask you, I gotta say, so tell me tonight you don't make it from here to the grocery store. How much money do you leave Miss Jackie? I need a dollar amount. And he's got to sit there and look at it. And now here's what happens. She is listening for that dollar amount. She's like, what you mean you ain't got but $1,000 in the bank? I need that. I'm gonna say, Mr. Hollins, how much life insurance do you have that's in force? And that's an important question. What's in force right now that if something happened tomorrow, your company's going to pay you out a check in a couple of weeks? And it's important that I say that in front of Miss Jackie, because guess what? If something happens to Mr. Hollins, Jackie, her family and her legacy is at risk. She may already be working full time 40 hours. So she can't go get another second job. Who's going to raise the kids? Right. And what we don't want to do, and I'm going to ask him, Mr. Hollins, you got two decisions to make. Either we make a decision tonight to put things in place for Miss Jackie, or you and I, or you're going to force her to have to get married to somebody else for money.
But I gave her my Kroger Plus card, though, man.
Hey, yeah, you got it. I'll tell you what, if you believe in ghosts, you do not want to have her coming back haunting your butt down the road. And here's why I say it to people like that.
Yeah,
because part of it is funny. But let me tell you what one man never wants to think of. He never wants to think about his wife being intimately with another man. So I reached down to his core. Man, if you don't make a decision for this $25 a week to take care of her and your two kids that are in the room and this house that's over their head, and making sure you say you want your kids to go to a Morehouse in Spelman, if me and you don't make a decision right here tonight, you take that option away from them. And the reason why I say that in front of him is because I need him to physically understand what's at risk. It ain't, it's the value of you not being here is significant. But the value of your kids growing up without a father and being broke, and then Miss Jackie having to marry somebody that may not have those kids' best interests at heart because you don't want to make a decision about that's what's at risk. And I do the same thing. I do the same thing to Miss Jackie because she has a contribution to the family. She has a contribution to the house. So when I'm done talking to him, I'm drilling in on her. Miss Jackie, guess what? How much, because she's a responsible adult and they both have to make these decisions. Miss Jackie, if something were to happen to you tonight, do you have something in place that's in force that's going to allow Mr. Holland to help raise your kids, keep that roof over your head, enjoy the same quality of life, make sure your kids go to Spelman and Morris? Because a lot of times as a husband and wife, they're going to have similar goals for their kids, and everything that we're doing is for the betterment of the kids. Now, I'm going to also tell her, if you don't have this in place, guess what? Mr. Holland has to look for a spouse that may be able to contribute financially, that he may not marry, that he may not really love, but he's looking for a financial means from her. He's looking for her contribution. Let me tell you, guess what Miss Jackie ain't thinking about? No, I don't need some other woman. I don't need another woman trying to raise my kids because I don't want to set $10 a week aside. See, those are the conversations, you guys, even when we get off of here, those are the conversations that we have to have. And we can have, I have them at the dinner table. I have them on Zoom. I have them in a church. And it's a conversation. But here's what happens. My very first death claim was my best friend over 20 years. I was an agent for 2 years. I got on him almost 5 or 6 times in a period of 2 years. I wrote a life insurance policy for him in a bar because I saw him tip the waitress almost $80. I went to the car, I got my computer. I said, look, Vic, if you can tip her $20 on a couple shots, you writing that $80 policy. And guess what? We wrote a policy, but 14 months later, he passed of liver and kidney disease. Nothing we could do. But I told his brother, who was his beneficiary, and he wasn't married, he didn't have any kids. I said, Sam, I can't replace Vic, but we got a policy, and you're the beneficiary. He paid $78 a month for 14 months. Remember, not married, no kids. So most people say, I don't need to leave a policy for anybody. I ain't married, I ain't got no kids. I don't need that. That's a very selfish way of thinking. But when his brother called me 5 months later, because it went through a little bit to get a check, he called me and said, Cornell, I got the check. And I was like, what are you talking about? You got what check? He said, Cornell, and it was right before his son's birthday. He said, Cornell, I got a check for $150,000.
Wow.
He didn't put one penny
Wow.
in, he didn't put one penny into that policy. He used that money, if he got a ring and proposed to his fiance, his baby mama. He threw one hell of a birthday party, which I have no coincidence that I believe he got that check the 2 weeks before his son's birthday, and then they put the money down on a house. Now, what if I didn't stay on deck about that policy? What if I was worried about ego and then said, we're going to go write this policy in the middle of the bar? Think about now his brother's a homeowner. His nephew is growing up in a house instead of an apartment. He can, now they're married. Those are the things that he was able to contribute, even though he's not here in the physical. His family, his nephew, his brother's wife, they're always going to remember that contribution that he made because of a conversation that we had 4 or 5 times. And that's what I want everybody to think about. Think about the benefit that you can have just by having a conversation with your brothers and your sisters and your cousins and your aunts and your uncles and your mom and your dad. And that's what we got to get past the ego and the pride and just say, look, hey, I got it. This doesn't mean everybody's got to come to me. This means Miss White's got to talk to her husband and say, do we really have enough? We need to say, is everything enforced? You guys got to ask your spouses, is it enforced? Because you used to have it a year ago and you ain't got it now, don't mean nothing. You need to ask your spouse or your partner, is it enforced? How much do we have enforced? And the goal is, you'll hear Dave Ramsey say 10 times your income, and that's based on getting a 10% return on that. Honestly, you guys, if you really want to do it right, have 20 times your annual income in insurance. And here's why. You're always going to be able to find an investment tool where you can get 5% return on that. And that 5% will replace your spouse's annual salary. So 10 times your annual salary is the minimum. 20 times your annual salary is the goal.
Hey, we
Thank
appreciate
you.
Kiera.
Oh, no, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, we really appreciate the wisdom of the two of you.
Yes.
The two of you have personal experiences. One standing over people in the hospital, the other one, the one in the hospital bed. So we got it from both perspectives. We really want to thank you for that advice on advanced directives, life insurance, and importantly, just sharing about talking to people, having those hard conversations. And I'm going to turn over to the one that's the sharpest of the two of us. It's always two knives in a box, and I'm the dull one. I'm going to turn it over to
All right. Thank you all so much. I just want to echo what Mr. Wendell said. Thank you so much. This was a wealth of information. I've learned a lot from just the past hour. It's important to have those conversations. No matter where you are, have those conversations. Be informed. So I just challenge all of the audience to at least talk to one person that is in your circle. At least if you talk to one person, then that person can talk to one person, and you don't know how big of an effect that can make. So we appreciate all of you tuning in. Join in next Thursday. Next Thursday's topic is funeral planning. So this is kind of a continuation of what we've talked about today. It will be very informative, and tune in next Thursday at 7:00 Eastern. And if you have any questions, Chaplain Jackie's information is at the bottom of the screen here, as well as Mr. Wendell. So we appreciate everyone, and see you next Thursday. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.